Hello children. Today we will begin with Unit 3.3, Stephen Hawking. He was an English theoretical, physicist, cosmologist and director of research at the Center of Theoretical Cosmology within the Cambridge University. Hawking was the first to set out a theory of cosmology that is the study of universe. He was an honorary fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. So children, this chapter highlights the history of Stephen Hawking and all the great works that he has done. Now children, the hard word in this passage is cosmology. That is, science of the origin and development of the universe. In simple words, it is the study of the universe. Now children, I'll begin with the explanation for the passage in front of you. So children, Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942. Apart from being a scientist, he was also a professor and author. He has done mind-blowing works under physics and cosmology, that he was really interested in the study of space. His books have also helped many people understand science even more better. But children, at the minor age of 21, while he was still studying cosmology at Cambridge University, he was diagnosed with ALS, that is, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is a disease of the nervous system that weakens the muscles and affects the physical functioning of the body. So, some part of his life has also been made into an English movie in 2014. The name of the movie was The Theory of Everything. So now we have the next passage. Here we have the meanings. Catapulted means launched. Prominence means the state of being important, famous or noticeable. So children, I'll begin with the explanation for the passage. Stephen Hawking has written and co-written 15 books together. Some he has written on his own and some with the help of another author. In 1988, Stephen Hawking launched himself internationally when he launched his book, A Brief History of Time. This book helped many common people understand cosmology, about space, time, and even about the existence of God and future. It was a best-selling book and was on the top of the list of best-selling books in the London Sunday Times for over 4 years and has sold millions of copies all around the world. It has been also translated into 40 different languages. So children, some people found this book, that is, A Brief History of Time, little bit difficult to understand. So, in 2001, he published another book, which was a sequel of his first book. The book was named The Universe in a Nutshell. This book gave a detailed information on big theories of cosmology. Now here we have the meanings. String theory means a cosmological theory based in the existence of cosmic strings. Articulate means to form a joint segment. Holy Grail means a thing which is eagerly pursued or sought after. Dimension means aspect or feature. It depends upon the length, breadth, height. So children, now I'll begin with the explanation for the passage. As some people thought that his first book were difficult to understand, in 2005 he published yet another book, that was A Briefer History of Time, where he simplified the original basic concepts and also simplified on the developments in the field like string theory. So children, what is a string theory? String theory is a cosmological theory based on the existence of cosmic strings. What are cosmic strings now? Cosmic strings is a thread-like concentration of energy waves within the structure of space and time. Those are very minute. So children, all these three books, along with his research and papers that he was working on, was Stephen Hawking's personal research for his interest in science. Holy Grail, which means this was something which he wanted to do all his lifetime. He wanted to eagerly pursue this, but it was very, very difficult. So children, this was his single theory where he could combine both cosmology and quantum mechanics to explain how did the universe begin. He was really keen at knowing what was the thing that created the universe and the organisms living in it. He wanted to combine the study of the big, that is space, with the study of small, that is quantum mechanics, which is a physical science dealing with the behavior of matter and energy on the scale of atoms and subatomic particles or waves, like the magnetic waves. That means he wanted to study space and also the minute atoms and molecules that are present in space. He wanted to know the things, the smallest things that we do not know about space and what lies in it. And he had so much of great desire and determination to succeed in his work. He also told the world that he could think in 11 dimensions. So children, a dimension is a measurable extent of a particular kind, such as length, breadth, depth, or even height. So children, by thinking in 11 dimensions, Stephen Hawking could make some big possibilities for humankind. He also thought that time travel is possible. It may be traveling into future or even in the past, or it can also be traveling through time, traveling through the speed of light from one planet to another planet. And that he was sure that in the future humans would start civilizing and living in other planets. So children, the hard words in this passage are: inevitable means unavoidable, spontaneous means voluntary, chaos means complete disorder and confusion. So, children, I'll begin with the explanation. So, in this passage, we learn that in September 2010, Hawking spoke against the idea that God could have the universe in his book. Means he spoke against the idea that God could make universe, and this he spoke in his book The Grand Design. He had previously said that the belief in the creator, that is God, would work properly with modern scientific theories. This was his previous thinking. But as he moved on in his life, in his research, he started changing his thoughts. But in his new works, he was against the thought that God created the universe, where he even told that the Big Bang had occurred due to unavoidable consequences of the law of physics and not God. He said that because of gravitational force, the universe can be created on its own and nothing else is required. He also said that physics and its law and continuous creation is the reason why the universe and all the living organisms exist. So, children, the Big Bang theory is something how astronomers explain the way the universe began. When the universe began, so children, now I'm giving you a little bit more information about the Big Bang theory. What is it? So, when the universe first began, when it first existed, it was just a hot tiny particle mixed with light and energy. It was nothing like what we see now, as everything expanded and took up more space. That means it was very small particles of atoms. Now we can see planets, moon, stars, asteroids, but when it started forming, it was just a tiny particle. So as it grew, it expanded in space. So as it cooled down to form the cosmos or space we know of right now, the tiny particle grouped together, that tiny particle which was there in the beginning, grouped together, they formed atoms. Then those atoms grouped together over a long time. Atoms came together to form the stars and galaxies. The first stars created bigger atoms and groups of atoms called molecules. That led to more stars being born, and at the same time, galaxies were crashing and grouping together. New stars were born and were dying out as well. And things like asteroids, comets, planets, and even black hole were formed. This is how the universe came into existence. That is the Big Bang theory. So, children, coming back to the passage, Hawking was challenging Sir Isaac Newton's belief. He was challenging Newton's belief because Isaac believed that the universe was made by God, but Hawking was against it. He was thinking exactly the opposite. So, children, here we have another passage. I'll begin with the explanation. Stephen Hawking said that it is not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper and the universe going. This phrase means that to awaken or excite so that something can be created. It may be magically or made by God. So, in short, Hawking wants to just tell out to people that this universe wasn't being created with magic or by God. It was created because of science. He did not believe that God with his magic created the universe. So children, when Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with ALS, slowly the nerves that controlled his muscles were shutting down. And that time, doctors had told that he would not live for more than 2.5 years. When Stephen Hawking was 21 years old, he began realizing that all was not good with him physically. He would suddenly lose control over his leg muscles and trip and fall down, or he would also lose control over his facial muscles and mouth, and his speech would slur. It would become unclear, and people could not understand what he was speaking just for a little while. But he ignored all this problem that he was facing till it got so bad that it got easily noticeable, and his father saw this. And then he took him to a doctor where he underwent many tests. So children, this is another passage. The hard word despondent means in low spirits from loss of hope or courage. So the picture down there you can see is electrodes. I'll be explaining you this shortly. Let's begin with the explanation. Here he is describing, Stephen Hawking is describing how the tests were conducted on him. Like they took a muscle from his arm and stuck electrodes. Now children, what are electrodes? Electrodes is a medical device capable of transferring ionic current energy into electrical current in the body, then can be used for diagnosis. So this is stuck to the skin wherever the diagnosis has to be taken. You can see in the picture. Through this way you can diagnose any kind of life threatening conditions or diseases. They also injected radio opaque fluid into his spine. Now what is radio opaque fluid? Radio opaque fluid is a drug used to help diagnose medical problems. It is injected into the person's body. So it was injected into Hawking's body. Now how is the diagnosis taken place? After it is injected, X-rays are then used to check if there are any problems in the place where it is injected. It helps in diagnosing the problem. But children, even after so many tests, the doctors could not tell him exactly what was wrong with him. They told that he did not have multiple sclerosis, that is a disease of abnormally hardening of body tissue, but instead the doctor said that he was a typical case. That means something unusual or rare illness. Okay, he was suffering from something that was very rare or not known to people. Then finally, after long test, the doctors could find out about his condition, and they realized that he was in the early stages of ALS. It was very upsetting for him and his family, but there were two incidents that took place in his life after the diagnosis which changed the way he perceived his situation. He did not get into depression. There were two incidents that happened because of which he thought that his situation is not that bad. So what happened is that once in the hospital, okay, when he was in the hospital where he was, there was this other boy, okay, who was suffering from leukemia. It is blood cancer. So that boy was suffering from blood cancer. So he was in great pain, and Stephen Hawking felt, looking at that poor boy, that at least he was not suffering like that boy. He was not having that much of pain like that boy. So he felt that his situation or condition was much better than that boy. And then later on, when he went back home, when he was released, he had a dream one day where he dreamt that he was going to die suddenly. That incident made him realize that there were a lot of things that he had to accomplish in a very short span of time. You remember, children, that the doctors had told him that he had only 2.5 years to live. So now he had to do a lot of things within that time, and that made him work more seriously on whatever he wanted to achieve. Now in this passage, we have a hard word, that is diminished. It means made smaller or less. So I'll begin with the explanation for this passage. So children, Stephen Hawking's disease has helped him a lot more hardworking. That means it has made him even more hardworking, and because of which he became a great scientist. Before the diagnosis, Hawking wasn't very focused in his studies, and he did not have any goals in his life. He was actually bored of life. Now that he had learned and realized that he would not live for a long time to even finish his PhD, so he dedicated his entire time and energy in his work and research. Now, on one hand, Stephen Hawking was becoming very famous and was doing very well in his career, coming up with great theories in the field of quantum mechanics and cosmology. While, on the other hand, his health was deteriorating very, very rapidly. He could hardly walk. So now he was forced to use a wheelchair by 1969. But the effects of his disease started to slow down over time. So children, this is another passage. So the hard words are: tracheotomy means an incision in the windpipe made to relieve an obstruction to breathing. Acclaimed means publicly praised or celebrated. Physicist means an expert in or student of physics. So children, I'll begin with the explanation. So because he was paralyzed, okay, Stephen Hawking was paralyzed by now, neck downwards, okay, below the neck. In mid 1970s, now a graduate used to assist him, okay, with all his work, most of his work, because he couldn't do most of his work, basic things. He could eat and get out of bed by himself in the beginning years, but all other work had to be done by others. Okay, that was the assistant. His speech became so slurred when he lost control of his muscles that only the people who knew him understood what he spoke. In 1985, he lost his voice as tracheotomy had to be done. You can see in the picture. Tracheotomy means an incision is made in the windpipe to relieve an obstruction to breathing. So children, now he could not even dictate to his assistant whatever he wanted him to write down. It may be about his work or about his theories. So this now was a barrier, an obstacle to his work. He now had to be taken care of the entire 24 hours as he couldn't do anything on his own. So now in this passage we have the hard words like peril means serious and immediate danger. Predicament means a difficult situation. Sensor means a device which detects or measures a physical property and records, indicates, or otherwise responds to it. So children, now I'll begin with the explanation. So children, this difficulty, okay, that Stephen Hawking was facing, where he couldn't even speak, was noticed by a computer programmer, okay, a person who was good or he was working as a computer programmer. He came to know about this bad situation of Stephen Hawking. So this programmer then came up with an idea and a design which was a speaking program which was specially made for Stephen Hawking, where Stephen Hawking could use just the movement of his eye or movement of his fingers initially, that is in the beginning when he had the power, in his eyes and fingers when it was working for him. Initially, do this program, that means he used to use this program for giving out messages. So now Hawking, using this program, could select words. How did this work? He could select the words on this computer that was provided to him with a clicker, okay, how we have some small remote type, okay, so he had a clicker. He could click on some buttons where he could give out the message that he wanted to give. Now after clicking, which would then pass through a speech synthesizer, okay, because they had to listen to what he clicked on. So this thing that he clicked passes through a speech synthesizer, and then that number of words becomes spoken words, okay. So the assistant who is there, they could communicate with each other through this speech synthesizer. You can see that in the picture. This is how Hawking began communicating with his assistant. Later, when he lost all control of his body, okay, even the fingers, everything that when he lost, he could not even move his fingers. So this program was later modified to work using movement of a muscle. Now instead of using fingers and eyes, a muscle was being used from his cheek. Okay, there was a sensor that was attached to his cheek which detected any movements. Okay, so now you can see how difficult it was for Hawking to communicate. Okay, we have another passage. Prolific means productive. Lucasian professor means a mathematics professorship in the University of Cambridge, England. Its holder is known as the Lucasian professor. So I'll begin with the explanation. Now, children, in spite of all his health concerns and problems, he published as many as 15 books, did a lot of research with the help of his assistant on various very difficult and important theories on quantum mechanics and cosmology. He was at the post of Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge University for 30 long years, and in 2009, when he felt seriously ill with a chest infection, he still remained very strong spirited, that it helped him to continue with his work till he finally passed away on 14th of March in 2018. So children, you can see here we have an example of a person who faced serious ailments for the major part of his life and could hardly even manage doing basic functions, and yet he could fight all these obstacles and come up with astounding work which has revolutionized the field of cosmology and quantum mechanics. Okay children, with this we have now completed with the explanation. Thank you for listening children. Take care.